Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal development and cultural evolution. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. Depression seems to be an epidemic. It's defined by a collection of symptoms. You feel crappy most of the time. Nothing seems interesting. Everything seems overwhelming. You have trouble with sleep, or you feel guilty and anxious and have thoughts that life isn't worth living. Each symptom reinforces and inspires new symptoms, and this is a sign that your brain circuits are caught in the downward spiral of depression. So how can you reverse it? Today we'll be talking about actionable step-by-step skills that can help you reshape your brain and create an upward spiral towards a happier, healthier life. Our guest today is Alex Korb, PhD, author of the new book, The Upward Spiral Workbook, a practical neuroscience program for reversing the course of depression. Alex is a neuroscientist who has studied the brain and mental health for over 15 years, starting with an undergraduate degree in neuroscience from Brown University. He received his PhD in neuroscience from the University of California, Los Angeles, where he wrote his dissertation and numerous scientific articles on depression. He is author of The Upward Spiral and is currently adjunct assistant professor at UCLA in the Department of Psychiatry. Outside of the lab, he's a scientific consultant for the biotech industry and is a head coach for the UCLA women's ultimate Frisbee team. He has a wealth of experience in yoga and mindfulness, physical fitness, and even stand-up comedy. So we're going to see if he can make us laugh about our depression today. Hello, Alex, and welcome to the Pathways Show.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you wrote The Upward Spiral 10 years ago, and now we have The Upward Spiral Workbook.
Well,
What
yeah,
led you to...
actually, we got there as the second edition. I wrote the workbook about 5 years ago, and
Mhm.
the second edition just came out a few months ago because I realized, science isn't static, and there are some things that needed to be updated in the last 10 years, and things that I've learned from coaching people over the last 10 years. I was like, oh, that could be explains a little better, more tools that you
Uh-huh.
could use, or more skills that could be developed.
And is this, if somebody is interested in digging deeper after our conversation today, is this the book that you would recommend that they get, the second edition?
Yeah, the second edition is the most updated, and if people want, more hands-on tools, then the workbook can be helpful. But the book itself has a lot of actionable tools. It basically
Okay.
explains, hey, here's why your brain is stuck in
Mhm.
depression. And it's not really limited to depression, but it's, why the brain gets stuck in these patterns of self-doubt and negativity and anxiety. And here are the tools that you can use to start to reprogram those brain circuits and actually create the the sense of calm and focus and fulfillment that you're looking for.
Whenever you want.
Well, not necessarily whenever you want, because like that's part of sometimes the problem is your unreasonable expectations about what it means to have a human brain. And some of our limitations are just biological. But that's where I love about the neuroscience, because I know for me, there's lots of things like procrastination or getting tired or losing focus, where I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why is this happening? And learning some of the neuroscience, I started to see, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, that's just what having a human brain comes with. And so understanding this stuff doesn't suddenly mean that, oh, you no longer have limitations, or you never feel sad, or you never feel anxious. It just means you stop getting in your own way, and that you can start giving your brain what it needs to create an upward spiral.
The structure of the human brain is a little bit it's a little bit puzzling because it's sort of like evolution. Evolution doesn't, like, okay, let's say you have a software project and the software starts to get really buggy and unwieldy and there's been so many extensions. That kind of reminds me of the human brain. But in the software arena, you can say, okay, we know what all the bugs are. We know what's shaky. Let's just start over. But
Yeah.
evolution doesn't work like that. Evolution is constantly patching and adding on, and that complicates the hell out of things.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great way of thinking about it, because you have these different brain circuits that evolved at different times for different purposes. But the old ones didn't go away because they were useful. They were super useful for your survival or
Right.
your learning or memory. And so just new brain circuits were added on top of it, and they have to interface with the old architecture, but they don't always follow the same logic, and a lot of bugs can show up. But what I've noticed is that a lot of things that we describe as bugs are actually features in a different context. And so they are pulling you in a different direction, and it might be unhelpful for your current goals, or they might be creating problems. But part of the solution is starting to see how those things actually benefit you. Because
Uh-huh.
even if something's creating a problem, if you realize, like, oh, well, that's actually helpful 90% of the time, just not right now, then I don't need to get mad at myself for having it. Just like a hammer, it's a really helpful tool for building a house. But when it comes to, putting up drywall and painting, it's it's not the right tool for the job. But like, if I have a hammer, I don't need to be like, God, stupid hammer. Like, why do I have this hammer? This is useless. I'm trying to do this thing. You can be like, I'm so glad I have this hammer. I'm gonna put it back in my tool belt right now and reach for another tool. But like, your brain and some of the deeper brain circuits are like trying to be a helpful assistant. They're like, oh, I think you need this. Oh, I think you need a hammer. And like, they're handing you your brain's handing you all these tools. And most of the time they're helpful and it's not a problem. And you just can live your life automatically and intuitively. But sometimes, depending on your goals, if your goals change or your values change, your life circumstances change, the habits, the habits that are programmed in your brain don't automatically change. And so it's handing you the hammer and you're like, stupid hammer, like, I need a paintbrush. No, you can just be like, oh, I'm so glad I have this. Put it back in your toolbox and find the tool that you need. But no tool is always the perfect for everything.
So this ability to change tools when you need to, is that an example of what you refer to as practical neuroscience, learning how to do that?
Yeah, definitely. The practical aspect is understanding like what these different parts of your brain are helpful for, and appreciating them for the things that they are good at, and using them automatically for what they're good at. And like, when they're not good, well, that's fine. You use a different part of your brain. It's sort of like having a group of friends, and you might have one friend who's like really great problem solver, and they're really practical, and they could help you with your taxes. But like, they're not the most fun to hang out with. So if you want to go have fun, you're going to go hang out with this other friend who's like a crazy, partier. He's also not that relaxing to be with. And so if you're having a problem, you might not go to them for comfort, but you can see, I have these different friends that support me in different ways. And once you have that awareness about yourself and how these different people in your life can help you, you can be a lot more intentional. You can't change the part of your friend into the person who's going to help you move. You can't change, the way that someone fundamentally is, but you can have that awareness to use that relationship in a more effective way for what you're trying to accomplish. And that's what our brains are like. You're not just like one thing, you're a collection of all these different brain circuits that evolved for different purposes, and they're pulling you in different directions.
And
And
do you
so
think
you
that
can listen to those and
do you
be
think
more
that
intentional.
getting fixated on one part of your brain or one way of approaching things is basic to the experience of depression?
Um, it's it's not even unique to depression. Like, I think a lot of times when people are stuck, they're like, what's the one tool that's going to fix this? And they're like, I just need the one thing that's going to fix this. And brain is more complicated than that. Sometimes when I'm coaching clients, I share this joke from the movie. I think it was the movie Roxanne with Steve Martin from like 30 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, what can you sit on, climb up, and brush your teeth with?
I don't remember.
And the answer is a chair, a ladder, and a toothbrush. But like, your brain is automatically, okay, wait, what's the one thing that you can do? And this is even a bigger problem for, smart people and high achieving people who are used to like figuring things out. And sometimes it's like, there's not one tool that fixes everything. But trying to
Right.
find that one tool is a mindset that you have that prevents you from taking advantage of all these different tools, all the menu of options that science has uncovered.
Okay, so we keep referring to tools, and how do you define a tool? Give me an example of something that you're speaking of when you use the word tools in
Yeah,
this
I use
context.
the word tool in a very broad and general way. Sometimes it's just changing the activities that you're doing. Like, your brain needs a certain amount of physical activities and activities that give you a sense of achievement, and other activities are important for creating a sense of social connection. Other activities are just fun or engaging. Uh, and um, you also need a certain amount of rest or inactivity. I think I missed one of the physical activity, social activity, relationship. Meaningfulness, that you need things that really not actually accomplishing something, but it feels meaningful or important. And sometimes the solution is kind of dumb of just like, okay, we'll just do more of these different kinds of activities. And these different activities affect your brain in different ways. They create different chemical patterns. They change the activity in different brain circuits. And so we generally know, okay, you need these different kinds of activities. And that's one of the simplest tools you can start doing, is just look at your life and be like, am I missing any of these things? Like, okay, just start there. And that's one of the simplest tools you can start using.
I think that the meaning um, one that you mentioned, that's the trickiest one. And I think it's the one that's most related to depression. So when people don't have a sense of purpose, life doesn't seem meaningful to them. So what do you recommend that they do? What is some tool or change that they can make to
Yeah.
affect that.
Well, sometimes the tools that you can use are more mental, just like
Right, right.
cognitive reframing or self-compassion or gratitude or mindfulness. And these different mental tools also affect the brain in different ways. And a lot of times people are stuck because they read about a tool and they think, oh, this is really helpful. And then they try to use that for everything. So, like, mindfulness is really helpful, but it doesn't solve everything. So, you need to understand your own brain. For my brain, when is this tool helpful and what is it helpful for? And when do I need to use something else? So, that sense of meaninglessness, that's a common problem, and not just in depression, but like in burnout. And you don't even need to reach a diagnosable level for it to be a problem. You just like, you accomplish a lot and you're like, but I feel like something's missing. There's not enough meaningfulness.
Right.
And some of that can be caused by an unhelpful expectation of what it feels like to uh, have a meaningful life. That just because you accomplish a meaningful goal doesn't mean all of your problems are suddenly going to go away and your life is going to be filled with rainbows and fairies. I mean, you're living in Hawaii, right? Like many
Yeah.
people are like, oh, well, if I could just live in Hawaii, then all of my problems would go away. It's like, no, the airfare is really expensive to get to. Like, you got a lot of bugs. Like there are problems, but one of the things that I find helpful about science is understanding, like, right, how do we end up creating our own problems or making them worse than they need to be? And one of those is with is with our expectations, because our happiness isn't entirely dependent on the good things that happen to us. That's something that a lot of people think. They're like, oh, people are happy because good things happen to them, and people are sad because bad things happen to them. But that's not how the brain works. Like, yes, those things can contribute, but how happy you feel about them depends on the difference between how good something is and your expectations. So if you go to a restaurant because your friend was like, this is amazing, and like, it's just pretty good, like you're kind of disappointed. But if you like watch a movie on an airplane where you're like, I don't really think it's gonna be that good and it's okay, like, oh, you're pretty happy about it. So sometimes the answer is as simple as like changing your expectations because you realize they were unreasonable, or you're having expectations about things that you don't actually have control over. And this is something
Yeah.
that happens in depression, where you focus a lot on the things you can't control, and that triggers all these emotions. And then you stop focusing on the things that you actually have control over that might lead to more meaningfulness.
I think the pursuit of happiness is inherently problematic because of what you just said, because we're constantly looking to feel good. And that depends on conditions to a great extent. I mean, is it novel? Is it a new experience? I mean, is it the same old thing? And we don't attach any value to the form of happiness known as contentment. I never hear anybody espouse contentment other than the occasional Buddhist spiritual teacher.
Right. Yeah. And that's like, I, as a neuroscientist, I'm just like looking at how the brain works and how all these different approaches change the brain. And one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of people, if you're a mindfulness expert, you're trying to tell everyone, like, oh my God, you got to do mindfulness. This is amazing. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And like, if you're a Buddhist monk, you'd be like, well, you just, practice acceptance and non-judgmental awareness. I mean, it's some overlap with mindfulness. Uh, but if you're an exercise person, like, oh, well, you just need to exercise more. And if you're a sleep expert, and I'm like, guys, like, you're all right. Like, but for an individual, you have to learn like, oh, I have this whole menu of options. They can all generally be helpful and they're all generally supported by science. But for me specifically, at this specific exact point, is this something that I should just be more zen about and just let go of my attachments and
my
self-judgment? And that
my
is,
craving.
yeah, and that is the answer a lot of times, particularly for high achieving people who used to try and control everything. You don't have full control over everything. So
Yeah,
stop trying to do it. You have to let
you,
go, but it's not the
you
answer for everything.
you point out that success sometimes amplifies stress. And you touched on this earlier. It makes me think, just as an example, take somebody like the actor Jack Nicholson.
Hmm.
You know, he won a couple Oscars and Golden Globes and God knows what. You know, one of the greatest actors ever. And, you know, he must be asking himself now, well, what do I do now? How do I top that? And
Right.
I've had some of that experience myself. This imposter syndrome, I think is what it's called sometimes, or, you know, that's an interesting problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, because there are a lot of things going on there. And one is actually, it's not the success itself that's creating the problem. It's that the kinds of people who have the brains that are passionate and ambitious and driven, those kinds of people have brains that can be more reactive to stress and more emotional. And so it's the same traits that make you really successful also create all of these problems. It's sort of like how for a Ferrari, the same, like the aspects of it, the features that make it so fun to drive, the big engine, the sensitive steering wheel, like are also the same features that make it more likely to crash and then make it terrible off-roading, like, but you shouldn't look at your Ferrari and be like, oh, stupid Ferrari. It's so sensitive steering wheel. I wish I just had a, 2014 Toyota Camry, or like, okay, well, you might have a Ferrari brain. So appreciate it for what it's good for. And if it starts getting in the way, like find another way past that. And
Yeah,
like
get
the
another
other
car.
reason that the success creates a problem is because then we change our expectations.
Right,
Like your
right.
brain is very good at adapting to whatever scenario you're at, whether
Hmm.
that's a terrible scenario, your house is being bombed and you're kind of like, okay, well, at least I have, electricity.
Right.
Uh, and, but if your situation changes, you adapt to it very quickly. And so your brain will not automatically focus your attention on all of the wonderful things in your life. You
Right.
can do that intentionally with the practice of gratitude or other things, but your brain evolved, many deeper brain circuits evolved to keep you safe.
You
And
know,
so
as
you
a
have a lot to
neuro,
lose potentially.
right. As a neuro, we've only got like a minute or two left here, and I want to ask a very direct question. You have a coaching practice. You're a neuroscientist coach.
Yeah.
And so do you help people figure out which part of their brain to go to under this condition or that condition? Do you help people develop the kind of little habits that you recommend in your book that will change their neural pathways?
Yeah. That's pretty much a good description, because I think a lot of people, they're looking to science for like a protocol. They just want someone like, well, tell me what to do. Like, how much exercise should I do? And how much sleep should I get? And like, that's why I wrote the book. Because like, when you do research on a bunch of people, you can find averages of like, oh, well, here are the things that tend to work for people like you.
Hmm.
The reason I started coaching is because that those averages and that knowledge doesn't necessarily teach you the skills you need to implement it in your life. Because what you often need is to be able to figure out, like for me specifically, do I just need to go for a run? Or like, do I just need to buckle down and write this email? Or do I need to do some deep breathing? Like, uh, those tools are all generally helpful, but you need to understand yourself well enough to be able to act intuitively. And that self understanding and practicing some of these different tools in different ways actually starts to reprogram the brain and starts to disrupt some of these patterns like anxiety and self doubt and overthinking.
So how do people get a hold of you if they want to go this route? Let's say they look at your book. They don't even have to look at your book. Just based on this interview, and they wanted to get some coaching in terms of like developing tools and aspects of their personality. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. At my website is probably the easiest way, alexkorbphd.com, or follow me on social media at alexkorbphd. It like I do have some free downloads, and reading the book can be really helpful because sometimes all people need is a little insight about what they need to do or to think about what they're already doing in a different way, and that solves the problem. But like, if you need more help and expert guidance or someone to help you see your own blind spots, then yeah, I might be a good person, but there's certainly help out there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us today. There's so much more we could explore, but as usual, we've run out of time. And I'm glad that we told our listeners about your website, which is www.alexkorbphd.com. That's Alex, Korb, PhD.com. And for those who may be listening to Pathways Live on a Sunday morning and have tuned in late, this is your host, Paul O'Brien, producer of the visionary I Ching Oracle, an app that supports great decisions and perfect timing. We're so glad you're with us today. Please note that you have the ability to review hundreds of interviews in our online archive at divination.com. You can play and or share this particular program whenever you want via the internet or as a free podcast, and I'll tell you how in a minute. Today we've been visiting with Alex Korb, author of the Upward Spiral, a practical neuroscience program for reversing the course of depression. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into Pathways, which is currently broadcast on KBOO-FM in Portland, Oregon. You can get a free subscription to our podcast, which you can also find at divination.com. That's spelled D-I-V-I, nation.com, or by searching for Pathways Radio on Paulo's YouTube channel, where you can also give us a thumbs up and subscribe. In any case, feel free to forward to a link to your friends. And this is Paulo bidding you adieu and reminding you to tell your friends about Pathways podcasts. And thanks again to Alex Korb and to all of you listeners for tuning in and being a part of the Pathways conversation.